Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. My name's Tom Ross, and I'm the founder at designcuts.com. And this week I'm joined by my fellow Brit and hand lettering expert, Ian Barnard, American retro design expert, Dustin Lee, and the incredibly talented South African illustrator, Lisa Glanz. This week we have a very heartfelt and serious question from one of the listeners, and we thought it would actually make a very helpful topic for the wider listenership. So without further ado, let's jump straight in, and I'm going to pass the mic over to my man Dustin. Take it away, Dustin.
Yeah, so I got, we had asked for questions a couple weeks ago, and Panda Bears by Alyssa on Instagram, she had put a great question, and she said, just want to make sure I catch the whole question. What would be your sorry.
It's good start.
I had to get it wrapped in my head, how to word it. What would your encouragement or advice be to creatives who truly have to put their creative work on the back burner for one reason or another? In my situation, I had my daughter a year ago, and she has a very medically complex diagnosis and extremely high special needs. I went from having a regular design income to having to quit my other part-time job because so much of my time is focused on her now. I love her, which is why I'm making the sacrifice, but I'm also a little bit heartbroken to have to leave my creative work behind. I just feel so unfulfilled because I love doing the work and I don't feel like I can commit to it to any one business or client, and I don't know how long it will be before I have to take an extended break for another medical emergency.
Oh man,
that's so.
You read that before we recorded, and it really got me actually. Who asked the question? What was their name? Had a Panda Baron, but what? Yeah, what was
Alyssa?
Alyssa. Okay, so first of all, before we even jump into our attempt at hopefully a decent answer, shout out to Alyssa for sharing so honestly, and massive respect for you as a parent and just generally a human being in terms of dealing with what sounds like something that's very tough and emotionally very tough for you.
Yeah, that's got to be rough.
In terms of how to best address it, what I would say is, and you know, take any of our answers with a pinch of salt, because none of us have really lived in this position before. But I can try and empathize and imagine with what my approach might be. I think the first thing is cut yourself an enormous amount of slack. So if you're feeling any guilt, then really work on trying not to. And self-compassion is such a huge thing anyway for all of us. Like when I was in therapy after I hospitalized myself and that whole saga, the main thing my therapist kept saying was, it's like you just are devoid of self-compassion. I was so hard on myself. And given everything you go through, that's a big sacrifice. It's it's probably a very big struggle. And so the last thing you need is to then guilt trip yourself or make yourself feel even worse. So I think you should try and be as empathetic as you can with yourself. Try and realize that anyone would struggle. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you wrong. You're not clearly doing anything wrong. It sounds like you're just being an amazing parent. So I would, outside of work, and we'll dig into the creative stuff in a minute, I would just try and practice as much self-compassion and as much self-care as possible. And I think often that stuff, the intent alone isn't enough. So I would try and structure it and schedule it, whether that's that you have a daily meditation at a time when your kid's in bed, or when you can fit it in, or whatever it takes to make you feel okay. Because I know when not to the same extent, but when I was like super sick and chronically ill, it was very draining on my fiance, having to look after me. She lived like a nurse for a year or more. And people often don't realize, the person who's really struggling and who's sick or whatever, yes, it's bad for them, but the people who are their direct support network need support themselves. And so often they're so stoic and so strong, they don't actually prioritize that, and they don't seek that out because they think, well, this person's relying on me. Therefore, that's all I become. I become the carer.
And they don't even
I become the
realize.
stoic one. Yeah, it can happen quite gradually, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say self-compassion, self-care, and finding your own support network is essential. That's before we even get to any of the creative stuff.
Definitely. And also, I know we are now, what I'm going to say is kind of diving into the creative stuff. I also think that that whole thing of giving up something that you love so much, you need to find a way back to that. Not necessarily, obviously not at the expense of looking after your daughter, but definitely, I mean, I think you need to look after yourself first as much as you want to really look after your own child, obviously. I mean, that's why they always advocate, like when planes are crashing, it's like, hold the oxygen mask over your face first before you help your child, kind of thing. I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I don't mean to sound crass, because obviously, I mean, I wouldn't even dream of knowing what it's like to take care of someone, who needs you 24/7. But I think you do need to look after yourself as much as you are looking after your little one, because I think
it's by extension, right?
Yeah, because
you can't look after someone if you're a complete wreck. You're incapable.
Exactly. Because if you start getting ill mentally and emotionally and physically, then you're not in a good space to help somebody else. So, I think we're obviously all going to dive into the whole creative side of things. And it sounds like you actually need the creative stuff to remain positive. So I think you need to find a way, and I think hopefully we'll be able to help you with that. I think you need to find a way to still continue doing that despite your circumstances that you find yourself in now, because it sounds like it's your way of, taking care of yourself, or your way of finding a relief, and that's super, super important. So don't disregard that. Yeah.
Can I share an example of that?
You can. Sorry, Dustin, just before I forget this,
Sure.
I don't have my phone to hand. Does someone that does mind making a note or a reminder of this? Can we actually, if we think it wouldn't be inappropriate, can we set up a group DM with Alyssa where we all chat to her? Because, I want to help her and answer the question in this episode, but I'd like to do that more directly. So I don't know fully what kind of work she does. Maybe you can share that in a sec, Dustin, but let's get a group DM and let's all see how we can very personally and directly help, because I'd really like to. And for example, if she's an illustrator, Lisa, I'm sure you would be willing to open up a slot on your free coaching and that kind of thing.
Yes.
Whatever
definitely.
we can do to try and personally help her.
Yes.
Sorry to cut you
100%.
off, Dustin. I just didn't want to forget that.
Yeah, she is an artist and illustrator, so yeah, I'm sure she would love that.
Okay,
Looks
brilliant.
like she loves illustration and lettering, so I bet it would be cool to do a group DM with her. But I was going to.
Shall we? I know how busy we all are. What if we, if she had time, what if we got her on a call with us, not to record and put out for the show, but to get her on, for a chat before we record one week.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we can hop on half an hour earlier and maybe just give her some ideas. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Dustin. Take it away.
No, that's a great idea. I was kind of going to jump off what you said, Lisa, that I think even the smallest things sometimes even the smallest efforts towards something we want to do, even if it's not being seen by a lot of people, or maybe it's something we just personally write in a journal or in our own sketchbook, can do so much. I know there's times when I'll go on a streak of writing in a journal. No one sees it, but it's just me being able to be creative for a little bit. And it makes me feel better. No one sees it. It doesn't elevate me in any way, but it makes me feel better. And I know that sounds trite, but I have a quote or a passage that's 3 sentences I wanted to read that goes with this. And it's from the School of Life, which is the most amazing site on YouTube. And it's called Good Enough is Good Enough. And he says at the end, it takes a good deal of bravery and skill to keep even a very ordinary life going. To persevere through the challenges of love, work, and children is quietly heroic. We should perhaps more often sometimes step back in order to acknowledge in a non-starry-eyed but very real way that our lives are good enough and that this is in itself already a very grand achievement.
Yes.
And again, that's not to be trite, but I think that's very literally true.
Absolutely. I think, I mean, in this particular instance, obviously, what her sacrifice to take care of her little one is heroic. I mean, that's amazing. And she's willing to give up something that she loves so much to do that. But I suspect, and of course, none of us know her real circumstances and what's going on, but I suspect that she could still weave it into her life somehow, and not feel that she has to lose it completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And when Dustin first read the question, I started thinking about those people that have a side hustle. Well, like many of us do, right? And even though the situation's very different personally and the pressures of life are going to be much more emotionally demanding and so on, the principle and the framework is still the same. You're trying to fit your creative outlet and passion around something else. And just because, like I say, it's something that's very emotionally demanding and family related, rather than it being a day job, the same principles apply in terms of you look for the pockets and windows of time and you do the best job you can to fit it in.
You know what it reminds me of is before we recorded, I was talking about concerns about sales because of the whole situation the whole world is in. And Tom, you said something that you said to me probably a half a dozen times, which is you can't look at one day. You can't even really look at a week. You have to look at the bigger picture, look at the month or look at the quarter, sometimes look at the year. And I'm horrible at that. But every time you say that, I try to remind myself to do it because sometimes like the most amazing stories come in a long span of time. For instance, I struggled a lot in the beginning of my business I was getting nothing done. I was drinking. I was not able to get clients. I was really quite a pathetic like person, like in the way I was behaving. And it ended up being like a very, a story I'm so grateful for because I know the contrast.
Yeah.
And in the same way, again, not to to minimize the situation season, but maybe this is the beginning of a really amazing story. And this part is the part where something special is happening and that feels very hard to see right now. But it's just the beginning of this fantastic story that you can't see yet until you get...
Yeah.
You have to look back to see it.
It could be that you can't do a 10-hour day with an employer who's, wrongly getting pissed off that you have commitments and so on. But maybe you find time to fit a side hustle into 1 or 2 hours a day, and that grows to be not only a cathartic creative outlet that helps with your overall mindset and sanity, but grows into your dream thing in the future. You never know.
Yeah, you never know, because I was thinking two things. One, from a business point of view, if she's still in a position that she needs to be earning some, kind of income, she could start analyzing or looking into businesses that don't require a commitment to a particular client, but that she can still offer a service. So whether it be, I don't know, a digital product, or maybe writing a course or whatever. And before she probably thinks I know most people are going to say, I don't know enough, I'm not an expert. You really don't have to be. There's so many people who are stages behind you. We've said this so many times on the show. Like, there's so many people that are still kind of catching up to where you are, and you're still moving forward. So they'll benefit from anything you have to say. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I think it would be so powerful, but obviously it depends on how much you want to share with the public and people. I mean, I don't know your situation, but I think it would be so powerful if you started, kind of voicing your emotions, the stuff that you're going through, and creating artwork around that, and then posting that. I think you'd be helping so many other women and men who are going through the same struggles, who have to possibly take care of a sick one, a loved one, or even if they've lost their job, and all those fears and emotions and everything you could really put into work that could inspire or help somebody else. So, I mean, those are two things.
Actually,
just
following
off the top
along
of
with
my head.
that, Yeah. What's a great way of doing that is like a blog. You know, dealing, because there's so many people in that situation of wanting to, like we got some friends, similar situation, and you know, she was trying to run an Etsy shop, but it's quite hard because you're like, you can't always be there to supply those needs, and so you're having to shut it down some days. And so having, you know, and also, yeah, so it marries up what you're dealing with at the moment, which will help other people. But there's probably many creatives who are in a similar situation where they have to maybe look after a child, maybe look after a parent, whatever that may be, and trying to fit it into their lifestyle. And it, you know, and it's sort of maybe giving people like projects, like illustration projects to do that can fit in a window of an hour or two, or even half an hour, depending on, or things you can do with minimal equipment, things you can do with limited color palettes or stuff like that. And so they will really resonate with people. And if doesn't mind being on video, then YouTube will be another avenue as well, because through that you can, you know, also link in if you're selling, like, digital products has definitely been one of the things where you don't have to be like for me, all I do is just reply to a few emails about, I can't download this or I can't install this. And it's like at the moment my situation is that
it's quite passive.
Yeah, and like at the moment I need, the kids are just like, especially my son really needs me at the moment, so I quite happily just drop stuff and go and be with him. Also, I need to drop stuff and be with my be with my nephew who has ADHD and a few other things, and so being stuck indoors is not very good for him. So I like one of his outlets is Xbox, so I got a headset and now I do like online gaming, which I didn't do before with him. I know I enjoy that, but you know, it's that thing where actually this season where like family and extended family actually come before my work, and not having clients is really good to relieve the stress. So if you can build up something else, whether like Lisa said, course, digital products, a blog can become something that you can earn money through,
and you can do it at your pace.
Yeah, your pace and your feelings. It's quite therapeutic to write about how you're feeling and try and intertwine that with some of the creativeness that you're trying to think. So it might be a blog post and you illustrate the cover to that blog post, would be like a, you know, and just give yourself a small, it doesn't have to be very long. And there'll be so many people out there who read that and go, that's just what I'm feeling. That's just what's going on for me at the time.
That totally reminds me of, so you guys have heard of the curse of knowledge. And for anyone listening that hasn't heard of it, the curse of knowledge is essentially, you know so much about something that you forget you know so much about something, and you undervalue the importance of it because you think, oh, everybody knows that, when really you could tell someone something that seems so simple or obvious to you and it's like gold to them because they don't understand it. But I think there's also like a curse of, for lack of a better word, a curse of emotional situation or where you are in life. I remember like when I had first told the story that I was like ashamed of drinking before I had started Retro Supply and all that thing, people would come and say, I'm like right there right now. I'm in that exact place right now. And you could tell they were just waiting for someone to be like, oh, I do this. Here's all these things I did. And I think even for someone in Alyssa's situation, there's so many people that feel like that and are desperately like waiting for someone to say, I'm frustrated. Sometimes I'm resentful. Sometimes I'm this or that. Here's this thing I'm doing. And they're like, yes, thank you. I just needed to hear that. And I think there's a curse of thinking, oh, it doesn't matter. What I have to say doesn't matter. But some people are like,
it does.
Or like no one's going to care.
Starving.
Is a misconception for sure.
Actually, my sister has done a really good, she doesn't do creative stuff, but my nephew has, one of the main things is fecal alcohol syndrome, which is the birth mother. So he's adopted. So my sister and husband adopted him. And the birth mother drank. Actually, she took drugs and drank, but it was actually the drink that caused brain damage. And so, but there's not much information out there. And so my sister has had to do a lot of learning on the job. And now she's running workshops in it for other healthcare professionals. So she's not a professional, but she's studied it, and she's very good at just studying all about it, reading up about it. And now she's running workshops for people who are specialists in certain areas because they don't know as much as she knows. And so it's amazing how you can go from like not knowing anything to be running workshops. And she didn't, and she's still learning about it, but she's gone through a hard time of all, sort of picking up pieces here and there so that other people don't have to, or enables them to see a bigger picture quicker than she had. So, I think it's it's easy to look into a situation and sort of resent that situation or what's around it, but actually think of it, okay, this can be like maybe my suffering in terms of, losing out and having all the time to create can actually be something that can help others. And how you can push that on, because we all find Tom's helping a load of people with a business, and how much fulfilling that is than just look at me, just come and
case in point, I did a lot of content about how sick I got and being chronically ill, and so many people messaged me and still do, saying like, I'm going through this right now. So it's exactly what you're saying, and they're like, oh, like someone gets it, and I feel like they're speaking for me.
And the thing is, if you talk about stuff like failure, and you talk about procrastination, you talk about imposter syndrome, and people so resonate with that. Those things that we think it's just us, when actually there's many, many other people, and actually people connect with your art if they know the story behind it, rather than just the faceless. Here's just an image, and that's it. It's actually the story brings it to life. So, and Melissa's story is going to resonate with so many people.
And I would say what we're recommending by the way of content, that's obviously one avenue, just because that's familiar to us. There are lots of other ones, but with that, the barometer of success is not like, go and get 100,000 followers and start a movement. Simply putting it out alone is a win. Because in doing that, it can be hugely cathartic. It can give you the creative outlet and the, exposure to creativity that you're looking for. And if it helps even one person, 4 people, it doesn't matter. Like there's one of my community, Maria, she's got Parents by Design on Instagram, and she's putting out content to help parents. And she doesn't have a gigantic following yet, but it's starting to be a small, close-knit community. And I know it's personally so rewarding for her to have like-minded parents connecting over her content and making friends and being able to share stuff. And so it doesn't need to be 100,000 people doing that. The impact's the same, even if it's a handful of people.
And I think once you start to reach out to the community and you start to have people that are like you were saying, Tom, about your content, they're like, I've been there, I've been through this. As they say that, it's almost like together, I feel like maybe you find this amazing way to fit in some sort of art. Maybe there's some sort of 5-minute project, 5 minutes in between lunch for this, and make something amazing.
I completely agree. We started this show as like a group therapy session, right? Because we were all in a very similar boat. We were creative entrepreneurs running creative businesses online. There's no reason why Alyssa couldn't potentially experience something similar, where she could get 3 people in the exact same position all over the world. And I'm not saying make it a podcast, but jumping on once a week in the small time they have, how much good would that do mentally for her? Because this has helped all of us tremendously, right?
Oh, yeah.
And if they were jumping on and being like, oh man, it's not just me, they completely get it, and you make 3 amazing friends out of it, how cool is that?
And just the
but
tips
also
you get as well.
Sorry, I just want to mention as well that it depends on her personality type, because if she's a bit of a Tom, I hope you don't mind me mentioning
a bit of a Tom.
Example, Tom. If she's a bit like Tom, then she might get like too involved in trying to do it all. Tom.
Oh, and I thought you were going to pay me a compliment, Lisa. Dragging me down with your negativity.
Just getting back at you.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, like, these are all great ideas, and I think they're fantastic, and I think we can help her that way. But at the same time, there's no point in putting pressure on yourself if you don't want to do all these like weird and wonderful, amazing things with it.
It's a great point. You'll notice I open with self-care. And also, you know, normally when we get a question, I'm like, and this could be the biggest podcast in the world, and go, do it.
Yeah.
Definitely not saying that. That's why it's like, maybe just create a little bit for fun and see what happens.
Yes.
I love how Lisa, so Lisa, I think, has had 1.5 glasses of wine. I love how she's one step away from turning Tom into like a verb. Like you could do a Tom. And it's actually very admirable what Tom does, but that almost would be a verb. Like you can Tom it and just like hardcore like dive into it. That's how you get through the problem.
I think I'm going to get revenge. So if someone has a drink, I'm going to be like, I think you should Lisa that, which just means down it.
Oh my goodness.
Right. Classic. I think you should Dustin that, which means to just not respond to anything. You really need to just Dustin that.
Yeah, your inbox is just crickets. You just got Dustin, my friend.
Just one step above ghosting somebody.
Yes, well, yeah, I wish I got ghosted, man. She Dustin me.
Oh man.
All right, so speaking of getting ghosted, this is kind of weird and personal to open up about, but I'm going to go there. I know in my younger years when something crappy befell me, and I'm thinking of like some heartbreaking romantic breakups and that kind of thing. And in your youth, you think it's the end of the world and it's the worst thing and your world's imploding and you just feel on the floor and it's terrible, right? And I always had a very similar approach where to try and regain an element of control, I would do anything and everything I could to move the needle towards feeling better and more positive, as opposed to it going the wrong way and feeling more negative. And when I say anything, it would literally be like, I'm going to eat that banana over there because that's going to give me a bit of energy and it's fruit and it's good for me. So I'm going to get some more potassium and I'm going to be like 0.01% healthier this week from eating it. You know what I mean? And I would do
that's way healthier than my response to breakups.
Oh, trust me, I've had some unhealthy
drunk messages. Please come back to me. I love you.
I'm sorry,
we're meant to be together.
I'm sure I had a few of those too. But I've noticed this is a bit of a pattern with me. It will be a culmination of small, medium, and big things that are at least within my control. And I know by doing it, it might have such a small positive impact, it's not going to fix things, but I know at least it's making it slightly better rather than slightly worse. And so I would look at the things you can do, because where people freak out is, I feel terrible, the situation sucks, I need to make it all better. And that's like when we talk about business, that's like saying, well, I'm poor and I'm broke and I need to be a millionaire and I need to be this huge success. And the advice we always give is, well, just take one step in the right direction, because it's the compounding and the consistency of just taking one step at a time over and over again that's going to get you there. And so you're not going to, well, there's nothing to fix, but you know what I mean? You're not going to make this all rosy and happy and fantastic overnight, but at least take even a tiny step in the right direction. So whatever you can do, ask yourself what makes you happy. Is it going to be doing a 5-minute doodle per day? Well, if so, then try to unfreeze yourself from feeling so terrible and overwhelmed. I know that's so hard in a situation like this. But if you can do that 5-minute doodle and you just feel a fraction better, well, you're better than you were the day before.
Yeah.
It's true.
And also that kind of discipline will also keep you on track, taking care of yourself, or reminding you that you do matter in this whole situation. Because I think we tend to forget, as we mentioned before, like you tend to forget that you do need to take care of yourself as well. So having like a set, I mean, that's a brilliant idea, Tom, like having a set routine of doing something creative every day would be kind of your ritual and your reminder that you do count in the situation and you do need to take care of yourself. So yeah, that's
and Lisa,
a good idea.
Don't you think that like the actual 5 minutes or 10 minutes drawing is not even really the point in terms of the output for the 5 or 10 minutes?
No, not at all.
Because like when I do it, I find like the next day, if I do it the next day again, what starts to happen is my brain starts to pre-plan okay, when will there be time this next day? Or what will I draw the next day? And then you look forward to something. You forget about the drawing. You don't even remember what you drew 3 days ago.
No, it's just the act of showing up and the act of sitting down and, doing the whole thing.
Yeah, like reframes everything.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm reading a book with the weirdest title at the moment called How to Fly a Horse.
Oh, sounds like my kind of book.
And it's all about creativity, actually. And like it's quite a history book, talking about sort of people who, because we think that ideas and creativity is just like aha moments, like Einstein and all those
Eureka.
people. But there are a series of small steps up to that point, and so it's just because we just think I just haven't got. I really struggle at the moment with sort of we're saying creative block, but it's just actually just putting small steps in place of just trying stuff of just work. Actually, creativity is work. It boils down to a lot of this stuff is actually just doing something, whether you feel like it or not. Whereas rather than waiting for that lightning bolt of creativity to hit you, which I'm always waiting for, but never comes. And so, yeah, I think, and I definitely, like, if I force myself to do something in terms of like just starting, even though I don't know where it's going, I always feel better at the end of it than just waiting to have that big
rather
boom
odd, isn't it?
of like, you shall do this, Ian. And,
channeling Gandalf vibes.
Sorry, funny.
Just while it's in my head, did you see Ian McKellen? This was like a couple of years ago, and I don't know why he was there. I think he was visiting a school, and he was stood by one of the windows of the school, and a bunch of kids gathered outside the window to see him because he's famous. And he was like, "Remember, children, if you do not revise for your exams, you shall not pass." And just started screaming at them. They're all like, yeah. Anyway, sorry, Lisa. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that whole process of sitting down to be creative is such a funny phenomenon. Like you procrastinate and avoid it and do everything else other than. And then when you finally sit down and do it, you love it at the end. It's just bizarre. I don't know. I find that whole dance and fight to be quite interesting.
It's not.
Yeah. Isn't it weird?
Oh, there's a good quote. I have to find.
What's wrong with us?
Go on, go quote searching, Ian. So, Dustin, would you mind if you're talking to Alyssa already, maybe message her and rather than we just suddenly dump her into a group chat, message and say, we've just answered your question on the podcast. Would you object if we started a group chat with you, with all of us? Because we'd all like to help any way we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, man. Have we got any final thoughts for Alyssa? And I feel like given how many people listen to this show, there's probably a bunch of them out there who are struggling with something quite severely, especially right now.
Can I just read this quote from this book?
Of course you can, Mr. B.
This is about creativity is taking steps, not making leaps. Find a problem, solve it, and repeat. Most steps wins. The best architects, science, engineers, inventors, entrepreneurs, and other creators are just ones who keep taking steps by finding new problems, new solutions, and then new problems again. The root of innovation is exactly the same as it was when our species was born, looking at something and thinking, I can make that better. And I suppose, that's what we do, really, isn't it? How can I...
Yeah.
You look at something, whether it's your own work or whether it's something else, how can I make that better? And then just through a series of, what I like about that is creativity is taking steps, not leaps. And I'm always trying to leap all the time.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I might have to make something of that. Most steps wins. Because I got my fitness tracker on me. And my son is always coming up to me and going, because he's got one now, and he's like, how many steps you done today? And he's like done about 16,000, and I've done like
how old is he?
I've done about 100 down to the bottom of my garden. Sorry, is that it? Does it? Yeah, 7.
How old is he in?
7.
Nice.
7. That's
awesome.
But he's just like he can't sit still, so he's like racking them up. Like the other day it was like 20,000.
Oh my
come
God.
on, give us a break.
How good must it feel when your dad is like your hero to look at your dad and be like, yeah, he wins at lettering, but I win at steps.
I own him at steps. That gave me $1 million idea, people. So if anyone out there listening is an app developer, Fitbit for creatives, where instead of steps, you log creative output, and then you gamify it so that you can like compete with friends and compete against yourself.
Nice.
Or some kind of
But
social.
you could cheat that.
Well, you could, but honesty and all that. You could cheat Fitbit if you really want. Put it in the
You
washing
see,
machine
I'm
or
already
something.
looking for a loophole.
Yeah, I know. How nefarious are you?
I could put my Fitbit on my son.
Yeah.
You put your Fitbit on your dog and tell it to go roam around your property for a while.
Exactly.
Wow, Ian, you've done 200,000 steps today. You must be incredibly fit.
You should put it on
Instead
that
of
glass of
record
wine.
But yeah, like imagine that as well as I'd love to see that as a social network where instead of focusing on likes, it was focused on output and consistency. I don't know.
What if something focused instead of an output on just one day at a time, one quality thing? Everything focuses on doing more. Like it'd be the cool thing if something was like, dude, that's it.
I got an
Stop.
idea. I think, Dustin, you might have mentioned this app where you're writing, and if you pause for too long, it deletes everything you've written. Was that you?
World's most deadly writing app. Yeah.
Yeah. So imagine the equivalent of like Ian's Instagram, and if he didn't post for one day, it got deleted automatically.
Well, mine would be deleted 100 times over.
But you wouldn't, because you would
I'd be
post.
negative numbers.
Even if it was crap, you would still post.
Right.
Maybe you can just do the same as that writing one and just do like, you're drawing something and it'll just delete.
The stick figure.
That would be amazing. Like a Procreate plugin or something that was like, if you don't finish this Procreate drawing in 5 minutes, it will literally just delete it.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go, Alyssa. Your question has bred the most popular creative app of 2022 because it's going to take us a while to build it.
Better yet, Alyssa build it. How cool would it be if that was the story behind it?
Oh God, yeah, that would be news coverage worthy.
Yeah,
I've got another idea you could do with fonts. It's like choose this font, and like when you're just struggling to choose a font.
Yeah,
if you've got a time limit, and then if not, you randomly it selects font, deletes it.
Dude, that's a rabbit hole, right? Fonts are a rabbit hole.
I know.
Yeah. This just sounds like we're kind of making an app that replaces the worst manager you've ever had. They're just standing over you, making you super stressed. Finish that piece.
That's
now.
the name of the app. The worst manager, the worst art director you've ever had.
Evil art director.
Yeah. The worst art director with no taste.
Maybe we can have an app where one of us just pops randomly up on your phone, just going, "Have you done it yet? Have you done it? Have you done that drawer?"
I think Lisa, she's most scary.
Absolutely, you got it
She'll
right there.
be like, rah, 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 and then he'll be like, glass of wine. Rah, rah.
Have her break a wine bottle and make a weapon out of it in front of you. Finish this.
I'm drunk and angry. You finish that Procreate bunny.
What you could do for Lisa is you could put like a little bit of like something under the bottle of wine, and if she doesn't finish it, it just shatters the wine, and the wine just is gone.
Or
I become the target.
Or we get this kind of, where you strap like a bag of feed to a horse's head. We could get like a sort of funnel attached to Lisa, which just drip feeds her wine, and she must drink
Hang on
it
a
no matter
minute
what.
here, people.
I knew I was about to take a sip of coffee. I was like, I'm going to choke on it or spit it when you say that.
We love you, really, Lisa.
Goodness. Sure you do.
So, yeah, Alyssa, sorry for the departure on your episode there.
And the
But
abuse?
we're not so worried about the abuse. Lisa can take it. But yeah, Alyssa, we hope some of this episode helped, and we will reach out, and hopefully you're receptive to chatting with us, and we'll do what we can to help. But for everyone else listening, we realize many of you are struggling with stuff, and we hope that you were able to take a few action points and a few notes away from this episode of stuff that you can actually start implementing today. Schedule that time focus on self-compassion. Make sure that you actually prioritize doing the little things that make you happy and just get the ball rolling. Focus on that next step, as Ian said. So that is it from us. We will see everyone next time. But thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we love all of the listeners out there. And we'll see you next week.
Yep.
See ya.
Cheerio.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. As always, you can find full show notes over at honestdesigners.com or find us over on iTunes and now Spotify by searching for The Honest Designers Show. And remember, we're now on social media too, if you search for Honest Designers. If today's episode helped you, then it would mean the world to us if you took just a moment to leave us a quick review over on iTunes, as this is one of the best ways for other designers to discover the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week right here on The Honest Designers Show.